Howdy folks, welcome back to the World of Tanks patch 8.9 test server while it's still up, which probably isn't going to be for very long. It's very likely that patch 8.9 is going to roll out this week, most likely Wednesday on the Russian server, Thursday on the EU server, and God only knows when on the North American and Southeast Asian servers. And of course, as soon as it rolls out on the Russian server, they shut the test server down, so this is the last chance we're going to have to look at some of these new machines. Of course, we finally made it to tier 10. Here it is. This new German monster, the Waffentrager auf E-100. Or the Waffentrager, which is just, what I'm calling it. This is an absolutely monstrous new tank destroyer. And yet, there are some surprises with this thing. Stat-wise, it has the most health of any of the tier 10 tank destroyers. It shares first place at 2,200 hit points with the Jagdpanzer E-100, which probably shouldn't be surprising. They're both based on the chassis of the E-100, for example. It's also, obviously, a very, very heavy tank. This thing weighs exactly 100 tons, and the suspension has a load limit of 150 tons. It has a 1,200 horsepower engine. And it can do up to 40 kilometers per hour. It's the third fastest of the tier 10 tank destroyers. Only the Foch 155 and the Object 263 can move faster than this thing. It's also pretty manoeuvrable with the 30-degree traverse speed. It's not the most manoeuvrable of the tier 10 tank destroyers, but it's about third place, I believe. There's a couple of them that have 30 degrees, one or two that have 32 degrees. But it's pretty fast and it's pretty manoeuvrable for such a large machine. Now, armour-wise, it's a good news, bad news situation. It's based on the chassis of the E-100. So 200 at the front, 120 at the sides, 150 at the rear. But that's just the hull. And the hull is actually pretty low profile. Now, the problem with the Waffentrager E-100 is that if anybody's going to be shooting at this thing, they're not going to be shooting at the hull. They're going to be shooting at this gun and turret. And the armour situation with the turret, 20 at the front, 10 at the side, 8 or nothing at the rear. Right? It's just a big open hole in the back with no armour whatsoever. That 8mm, for what it's worth, is there. And yes, you can buy a car at your local dealer that has more than 8mm of armour. So, yeah. Turret traverse speed, not that bad actually. Significantly faster than the Waffentrager Panzer IV, which you get at tier 9, which only had an 18-degree turret traverse. This thing actually rotates at 24 degrees. That's actually pretty damn good. A fantastic 420-meter view range. It's not just the best view range of any of the tank destroyers in the game. It's the joint best view range of any vehicle in the game. So that's really, really good. And a very, very good 720-meter signal range as well. Right, the guns. This machine is blessed with two of the best guns in the game. In my opinion, it gets a choice of two, a 128mm gun and a 150mm gun, just like the Waffentrager 4 at tier 9. Difference being, what are effectively the same guns that you get on the tier 9 machine, on the tier 10, they're autoloaders. And either one of these guns is entirely capable of killing a mouse from full health to nothing with one magazine. And there they are. Well, we'll stick them over here so you can actually compare the stats directly. Now, I am famous, infamous, pick your word, for not really liking these 150mm guns. This one, however, is different. On the 128 you get 6 shots in the magazine. On the 150 you get 4. On the 128 you fire off one of those shots every 2 seconds. On the 150 it's every 3 seconds. The 128 takes 60 seconds to reload the magazine. That's a long reload. The 150 only takes 50 seconds. It's still a long reload, but it's 10 seconds faster. The penetration with standard ammunition is the same 276mm on the 128 and 235mm on the 150. that you got on the equivalent guns, if you like, on the tier 9 machine, as is the alpha damage. 560 for the 128, 750 for the 150. The premium ammunition penetration with the 150, high explosive anti-tank ammo, 334. With the 128, APCR ammo, 352, which is actually more. However, high explosive anti-tank ammo maintains its penetration at all ranges. Point blank range, you get 334mm of penetration. 400 meters away, you still get 334mm of penetration. High explosive anti-tank ammo, however, does not like being fired at sloped, angled or spaced armor. You'll get a lot of bounces if you're firing at highly angled or sloped surfaces, and you'll just get 0 damage penetrations if you fire this thing into spaced armor. The APCR ammo, which has higher paper penetration of 352, doesn't really have as many problems with sloped, spaced or angled armor because it gets normalization values against sloped and angled armor. But it only does 560 alpha damage compared to the 750 alpha damage of the 150. But it's the next two stats which are the real eye-openers. The accuracy of the 128mm gun is 0.29. That's just ridiculously good, as is the aiming time of 1.5 seconds. Now, what impressed me more was the accuracy and aiming time on the 150. While it's not as good as on the 128, it's still bloody impressive. 0.34 accuracy on a 150mm gun with a 1.9 second aiming time. That's amazing. This is easily the best 150mm gun in the game. No question about it. With that kind of accuracy and aiming time, it's not inconceivable to actually be able to aim for weak spots with what is effectively the E-100's gun. That is a really, really good 150mm gun. So, whereas on the tier 9 machine, while I recognise that you can get good performance if you're using premium high explosive anti-tank ammo with a 150, you only really needed to do that if you were consistently facing tier 10s. Because at a tier 9 machine, that 235mm of penetration with standard armor piercing ammo on the 150, you're going to be firing that against tier 7s and 8s and other tier 9s a lot of the time as well, where 235mm of penetration is adequate. So there wasn't that much of a need, if you like, for a high explosive anti-tank premium ammo loadout with a 150. With a 128, you just never need to spend money on premium ammo anyway, because it's got the penetration, it's got the accuracy, it's got the whole thing. Up here at tier 10, it's the same but different. Now, as a tier 10 tank destroyer, you are going to be shooting at some very, very heavily armoured targets, and 235mm of penetration is it's a bit average. However, now you've got 0.34 accuracy and a 1.9 second aiming time, so it's not inconceivable that even with non-premium armour piercing ammo, you could still make this thing work just by aiming for weak spots. If that idea doesn't float your boat, and you're going to go with premium high explosive anti-tank ammo on the 150mm gun anyway, remember, high explosive anti-tank ammo likes to hit flat, large, unangled, unsloped and definitely unspaced surfaces. And whereas that was a kind of an issue with a 150mm at the tier 9 because it didn't have very good accuracy, this thing does have very good accuracy, 0.34 accuracy. So if you're going to use the high explosive anti-tank ammo, you absolutely definitely can and should aim for and hit flat, easy to penetrate areas of enemy tanks. I'm not necessarily saying you have to aim for weak spots, but you can aim for parts of the tank where the shot isn't going to bounce because it's hit a sloped surface or it's hit spaced armor. So that is a fantastically good 150mm gun. It's easily the best 150mm gun in the game. But this isn't the only tier 10 auto-loading tank destroyer in the game. Obviously the French got there first. Let me see if I can find. It's probably right at the other end of the carousel. Oh, of course it is. Come on, Frenchie, where are you? There he is. The AMX-50 Foch 155. This was the first auto-loading tier 10 tank destroyer in the game, and until patch 8.9 rolls out, the only auto-loading tier 10 tank destroyer in the game. And it has this phenomenally good 155mm SA-58 gun. So let's have a look-see and compare the two guns on the Waffentrager against what the French have to offer. And there they are. So the French gun only has 3 shots in the magazine, and it's 5 seconds between shots, which is 5 seconds is, you know, everybody says that the Foch 155 is overpowered, and is it really 5 seconds between shots? I mean, it's still got a 50-second reload, which is the same as the reload on the 150mm gun on the Waffentrager. And the Waffentrager gets 4 shots, which it can fire as fast as the 3 shots from the 155mm gun on the French tank. And they both take the same amount of time to reload. And while the French gun does 850 average damage per shot, with 750 average damage per shot and 1 more shot, the Waffentrager with a 150mm is doing more damage per magazine than the French tank. And they both have the same reload. So, yeah, and it's more accurate, and it's got a much, much better aiming time. Okay, so the 150mm gun on the Waffentrager is better, unquestionably better, than the 155mm all-loader gun on the Foch. Well, what about the 128? 6 shells in the magazine. Well, it's surely, you know, it has to remain exposed longer to fire those shots off. Nope. No, it can fire those 6 shots in the same length of time that it takes the Foch to fire its 3 shots. Don't forget, your first shot doesn't cost you anything because it's already in the breech. So 2-second reload between shots. There are only 5 shots remaining. It's 10 seconds. And with the Foch, first shot is free because it's already loaded and in the breech. The remaining 2 shots both take 5 seconds to fire. So that's also 10 seconds to empty the magazine. And the thing with the 6-shot magazine versus the 3-shot magazine, if you've only got 3 shots and one of them bounces or misses, that's really going to hurt. If you've got 6 shots in the magazine and one of them bounces and misses, well, it's not as bad, is it? Because you've still got 5 shots that can hit and damage. And so you're still doing more damage. And look at the accuracy and aiming time. It's not even a contest. 0.36 accuracy versus 0.29. 3-second aiming time versus 1 point. It's half the aiming time, 1.5 seconds. And the 560 damage, well, even if it misses a shot, it's still doing equivalent damage or more than the Foch is doing. So again, the 128mm autoloader on the Waffentrager is just a better gun than the 155mm gun on the Foch. So while the guns are clearly superior, and they just are, you know, the stats don't lie, the one thing, the one massive problem that the Waffentrager has that the Foch just doesn't, is that turret. The Foch is still a great machine. A lot of people have been saying, oh yeah, what's the point in having the Foch now when you can have this machine? Well, yeah, the Foch can take hits. The Foch is famous for being able to take hits. 180mm of armour sloped at the front. It's a very, very, very bouncy machine. Yes, it has to sit there and load and aim and fire its 3 shots. And yes, it's exposed while it's doing that, but I notice I choose the words carefully here. It's exposed while it's doing that. It's not vulnerable while it's doing that, because it's a very well-armoured, bouncy machine. That turret is a huge weak spot on this tank. It's practically impossible to miss. It's absolutely massive. It's bigger than the turret of the T-30. It's taller, and it has no armour whatsoever. If one of these machines is shooting at you, he's exposing his biggest weak spot because it's his gun. It's his gun and his turret. All right, if the Waffentrager is pointing his gun at you, you can hurt him just by shooting at that turret. Nothing ever bounces off that or fails to penetrate or do damage. And so while this thing does probably have the most fearsome Tier 10 tank destroyer gun in the game, in fact 2 of the most fearsome Tier 10 tank destroyer guns in the game, I still think it's actually quite well balanced, because it's the most vulnerable of any of the Tier 10 tank destroyers in the game as well. Anybody can kill this thing. You could kill this thing with a Panzer 1C. That's how crap this thing's armour is. The guys who drive the British tank destroyers are always complaining about the commander's hatch weak spots on the top. Right. You drive this thing, you're going to be wishing you had a weak spot on the top as small as the commander's hatch weak spots on the British tank destroyers. And so for that reason, despite the fact that these things are monstrously powerful, they're still glass cannons because they're ridiculously easy to kill. Compare, for example, something like this against the British Tier 10 tank destroyer. If I can find it, there you go. The FV215B183, the old Death Star, which also gets a monster cannon. In order to fire this thing, well, it's got 254mm of turret armour. You feel relatively safe when you roll around the corner in one of these things and point your gun at something. Not so when you're driving the Waffentrager. It is ridiculously vulnerable. It's a joke, actually. They've given it a hull with 200mm. I mean, it's E-100 hull armour. You think, yay, fantastic! Oh my god, look at my turret. You're just teasing me now with that hull armour values when you stick this crap on top. But, you know, and that's why I do think this thing is actually quite well balanced, because yes, it is fantastically dangerous, but anybody can kill it. The LOL tractor could kill this thing. Absolutely, definitely, 100%. You could kill this thing in a tier 1. That's how vulnerable that massive turret is to enemy fire. Now, as far as equipment fit goes on this thing, it cannot fit a gun rammer because it's an autoloader. I believe that this thing lives and dies by maximising the effective view range on it, and that means stacking not just binocular telescope but coated optics as well, and it's going to be expensive. And before everybody says, but Jingles, the maximum range at which you can spot a vehicle for yourself in World of Tanks is 445 metres, so adding coated optics as well as a binocular telescope makes no difference. Yet, that's true. 445 metres is the maximum range at which you can spot another vehicle for yourself. But there are factors that come into play that reduce your spotting range relative to what you're trying to spot, not least of which is the camo rating and the camo crew skill rating of whatever it is that you're trying to spot, as well as other features like bushes in line of sight, and so on and so on and so on. So in order to make sure that you have that maximum 445 metre spotting range at all times, that's why I recommend stacking not just binocular telescope but coated optics as well. As for your third option, there isn't really a lot else on there that says you need this on the Waffentrager. I would, if you can afford it, however, go for the super heavy Spolliner, and not for the armour protection against explosions and ramming, because anything that's going to splash this thing is just going to rip right through that 20mm of turret armour regardless of the Spolliner that you have fitted. But because the super heavy Spolliner also gives your crew 50% protection against injuries, so that would be my choice. It would be expensive, but I think it would end up paying for itself in the long run. So, let's have a few games. Okay, my very first game in the Waffentrager. As you can tell by the short barrel, I'm using the 150mm gun. You'll note I'm not using any premium ammunition, no high explosive anti-tank. I wanted to see if you could make this thing work with standard armor-piercing ammo with a 150. Bear in mind, this 150 is easily the best 150mm gun in the game. 0.34 accuracy, 1.9 second aiming time. And that 235mm of penetration, well, 0.34 accuracy is good enough to aim for weak spots. And yet at the same time, this is not an assault gun in the way that tank destroyers like the Jagdpanzer E-100, the Ferdinand, the way machines like that are. So it's kind of, yes, maybe, with the effectiveness of using this gun with the armour-piercing ammunition. because you have to stay at range. You've got 420 meters of view range. Now, that's not a very wide gap available to shoot at between the church and that wrecked building at that object 140. But watch this. It's good enough. And shooting at the side of a vehicle like an object 140 with 235 millimeters of penetration, yeah, it'll get the job done, no problem. So 1 shot fired, 3 remaining. Have a quick look behind me, and I'm going to be worried about this artillery behind me. There's another Waffentrager. Another 680 damage, and he's dead. Now the guy up in front of me is about to make the mistake of thinking, that one missed, not enough lead. He's about to make the mistake of thinking that he's driving an assault gun. Well, I'm out of ammo now, so I'm just going to pull the external view back here. At 235mm penetration with 0.34 accuracy, you can make it work, I think. I don't think this thing requires premium ammunition the way that the Tier 9 does in a Tier 10 game, because this thing is so much more accurate. You know what's coming here, don't you? Yep. You hit an ally. Oh, let's not pay any attention to that. Surely it was just an accident. And then he does it again. I don't believe he did it on purpose. I think he's just incompetent. You know. It's, so yeah, first game in a new machine is almost always disappointing. And I need to be careful when I'm driving this thing, because I've said before that a lot of the time you get a machine that's really, really good, but your first half dozen to a dozen games in it are just shit. And because, you know, you're getting the grips of driving the new machine. And that really colours your perception, you know, of how you think of that machine from that point on. I've had that sort of issue with a lot of my Tier 10 machines, because I just suck at driving Tier 10s. For some reason or another, it's like my level of competence is Tier 9. I go above Tier 9 and I suck. And so I have very negative impressions, if you like, of a lot of the Tier 10 machines in the game, purely because I just don't do very well with them, even though they are very, very good machines. Unfortunately, due to experiences like this, I started to get a very poor impression of this machine. And then when shit like this starts happening, I was about ready to wrap my tits in with this machine. And it wasn't any better with premium ammunition and the 150mm gun. Now there's a bug in replays where you can't actually see, but every single one of these shots is aimed square at the turret with 20mm of armour of another Waffentrager E-100. 3 of those shots hit. Every single one of them bounced. 334mm of penetration, 20mm of armour. And crap like this kept happening for days. And I was really coming to my wit's end trying to get a good result in this machine, thanks to the just seemingly random, arbitrary nature of whether or not your shots were going to penetrate, regardless of what gun or ammunition you used. Just for the sake of completeness, I had a few games of this thing with the 150mm gun without using any premium ammo. You can see I've got 1 clip of 4 high explosive anti-tank ammo there, but I'm not going to be using it. This is the standard armour-piercing ammunition, which, as you can see, 235mm of penetration, 750 average damage. Also, I'm going to be firing the high explosive ammunition, 950 average damage, but with only 85mm of penetration. Bear this in mind for future reference. That 85mm of penetration, that is more than the side armour of this M48 Patton on the enemy team. Just remember that, it's going to be important. So, First set of targets. They're in decent cover. There's that pattern. I haven't spotted him. There's too much concealment between myself and him, but somebody else has lit him up. 0.34 accuracy and a 1.9 second aiming time with a 150mm gun on this machine. And yeah, we are 3-0 down already. Now,
that one didn't go through.
Yeah. It's a sort of yes and no kind of situation with the standard armour piercing ammo. I did not expect to penetrate the front of the 215B183, but I did with one of the shots. I would expect to penetrate the front of an M48 pattern, and I didn't. It bounced. So there's that. Although the gun mantlet of the pattern, depends where I hit him. Obviously I'm aiming for centre of mass. The guy was like 300 metres away, so perhaps I hit him on the gun mantlet, in which case I shouldn't be surprised that the shot did bounce. 50 seconds later, 4 fresh rounds of armour piercing ammunition are loaded into the gun. And the trick, of course, is finding somebody who doesn't have his gun pointing in your direction. Jeez, look at that. E-100's burning. 235, good enough to get through the side of an IS-3. But E-100 in flames. I mean, sometimes I just do not understand people on the test server. That they have enough credits in gold to load up gold ammunition on every tank, but they don't bother with consumables like fire extinguishers. I don't know. Okay. First shot takes his tracks. Second shot, full damage. Bounces off an AMX-50B. Not the best armoured vehicle in the world, I'm sure you'll agree. Now, at this point I decide, screw it, let's see what the high explosive ammo is like. Prepare to be appalled. Prepare to be stunned at how bad the high explosive ammunition on this machine is. Just do not use it, ever. You're going to see why. Remember, 85mm of penetration. I'm going to slow things down here actually. This guy has less than 85mm of side armour. And this high explosive ammunition also has a splash radius. So I blow his tracks off and with the splash do 239 damage. He gets his tracks back up, I blow them off again and still only do 289 damage. This is 950 average damage here we're talking about. Here's my last shot. It doesn't even splash him. Unless that guy's tracks are 4 meters away from the side of his vehicle, that should have done some damage. Of course now, I just die. So, I had enough games with the 150 and non-premium ammunition to satisfy for myself that this is... Yeah, my initial impressions when I looked at the accuracy, the aiming time, were that you could have a go with this thing with non-premium ammunition on the 150mm gun. But my experience of driving it, I mean, the high explosive is just bad. Do not ever, under any circumstances, spend 50 seconds loading 4 shots of pure 100% fail into this gun. You will be disappointed. The armour piercing, just isn't consistent enough. And you have to bear in mind, however, that, you know, this is the test server. It's a very artificial environment. You almost never get games like this on the live server. Look at this. It's like more than 4/5 of both teams are just tier 10s. You can get games like this on the live server, but you always get games like this on the test server. So it's a very artificial environment. What you can do is see how the thing performs even under these artificial conditions and extrapolate from that how you'd expect the thing to perform on the live server. So I'm firing nothing but gold this time around. Yeah, hopeful shot, very ambitious shot at the front of the turret of that IS-7. Didn't really expect it to penetrate. Not even with 330. Oh, this guy in front of me? This right there is what happens to Waffentragers that get spotted. That's what happens when you get too close to use your view distance advantage and you don't let your team spot targets for you. Very powerful machine. Very easy to kill. So I'm going to get the hell back. I'm not the one spotting those guys. Fellas behind me up on the ridge line, they're the ones doing the spotting. So I'm going to take advantage of their detection. And I spy an easy victim. Set him on fire. Premium fire extinguisher. Second shot. Should have killed him. Of course it doesn't. And I have to waste a third shot with 750 average damage in order to do 10 points of damage to kill a Lorraine. But kill's a kill. One very dangerous gun removed from the battlefield. And we're winning quite comfortably, actually. 8-4. I'm going to speed things up while I sit through this reload. Oh, Foch 155. Yeah. That's what driving autoloaders is like, I'm afraid. It's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot. There's a target that you could kill, but you've still got 30 seconds to wait before your gun's loaded. And my gun is loaded. And there's a Ferdinand. Gold ammo at the front of a Ferdinand. It's like kicking puppies. Keep getting these low damage rolls though. Anyway, he's dead. Ferdinand can kill a Waffentrager. Hell, a LOL tractor could kill a Waffentrager. 20mm of armour on the turret. Tier 1 vehicles can penetrate that. And this one's all over now. And yep, that was 334mm penetration of high explosive anti-tank ammunition bouncing off the turret of a Waffentrager E-100. Never happens when they're shooting at me. In this game I'm going to illustrate something that should be all too well known by anybody who drives a machine with an autoloading gun, especially at high tiers. When your back is up against the wall, when you have to carry and carry hard, when you need to pull a clutch game out of your ass, you don't want to be driving a machine that has an autoloader, especially not with a 60-second reload. In those sort of circumstances, you need something that fires quickly and is fast moving, or something that fires hard and has a ton of armour. You cannot carry a game in one of these machines the same way you can in an IS-7 or an IS-4 or a T-62 or an E-50M. You just cannot do it. If you end up saddled with a team of donkeys in one of these machines, you're stuffed. There is just so much carrying that you can do. So, El Haluf, not my favourite map in the game. Side of the Jagdpanzer E-100? Yes please. Took his tracks off with a second shot, adjust my fire to the side of his casement. I've been spotted. Come on. Nah, he managed to turn and angle his armour against my final shot, so I didn't get the kill, but I did a monstrous amount of damage to him. How much? Oh, great. Our tortoise is a team killer. It was just one of those teams. Yeah. I wasn't watching what was going on. Perhaps he was defending himself against somebody who was trying to team kill him. Judging by the amount of damage he's taken, that is likely to be the case. But that doesn't actually make things any better. That means there are 2 retards on our team, not just the one. 411 meters away. I can see him. He hasn't seen me. That's the view range of this thing. It is exceptionally good. Now, what our 4202 thinks he's doing down there by himself, well, he's just going to die. Fair play to him. He went down there to try to stem the flow. But, oh, and there we go. Our E-100 has just team killed our tortoise. So the score is 3-0. We've killed 2 enemy machines, but due to all the team killing, we're actually losing 3-0. So Foch throws himself into the grinder. I don't know what the hell he thought he was going to achieve going down there like that, but I am not quite as stupid as him. I'm going to back up. Because I've been spotted. 215B. What are you doing? Okay, so you did some damage to the enemy 215B, and it cost you 2/3 of your health. Was it worth it? Now, can he sucker this guy into coming up? Yes, he can. Well, I've kept the 215B alive, hopefully long enough for him to reload, but look at the skulls. There's only 6 of us left alive. One of those is a team killer. And there's still 12 of the enemy. We're outnumbered 2-1. They know exactly where we are. Credit to the 50B driver, the AMX 5120 driver even. He's not so stupid as to come up over the rise with his crappy gun depression, knowing that I'm pre-aimed at him. He's just keeping me spotted. And here they come. Alright, I'm going to need to finish the job on this guy. He's gone. I still have 2 shots. There's one. He's taken my gun out. Still got 1 shot left. But we put the fear of God into these guys. We're going to lose. It's just a question of how much damage we can do. 215B driver saying, yeah, we'll lose. Do you think? Oh, great. Yeah. And look, there's a Foch. Right there. Doing... Oh no, he's finally turned around. I get my shot off, and then I die. It was inevitable. You cannot carry a team of idiots in a machine like this. No matter how much damage you do, you need to keep the enemy at arm's length when you're driving this machine. The second you get overrun, you just die. I mean, you can do a lot of damage while you go down, but you're going to go down. There are no 2 ways about it. So, yeah, you're not going to be carrying many donkey teams in this machine. And in the same way that you can't really do it in any autoloader, because when you're the last one alive, all they do is they just wait for you to empty your magazine and then they rush you. If the enemy team is dumb enough to come at you one at a time across an open field while you're in cover and they're all on 500 health or less, then yeah, absolutely. You're going to earn a Kolobanoff's medal in this thing. But I wouldn't count on it. It's not all bad news, though. And I realise that this is sounding like a very negative preview so far. But, you know, the machine does have its issues. But I have had a lot of games on the test server over the course of the last 4 days doing the groundwork for this footage where I do monstrous amounts of damage and just keep losing. It'd be nice to be able to show you a game where I do well and manage to win. Shall we do that? Yeah, let's do that. Determined to get a good game in this machine with the 128mm gun, because it is a fantastic gun, or it should be. My experience with it has been nothing but frustrating, however. And again, refuse to use premium ammo on this thing. You shouldn't need it with 276mm of penetration. We hear a Muravanka. Again, just monstrous matchmaking. Typical test server tier 10 matchmaking. But you know, and again, I'm not complaining about it. If you can do well in a machine with test server matchmaking, then it's a good machine. No question about it. So, 128mm gun, 6 shots, 60-second reload, 276mm of penetration, 560 alpha damage. I'm going to slow things down to half speed here, because this thing pumps out a shot every 2 seconds. T-54. Got his lower glacis. Takes 2 shots to kill him, fine. E-100. Appeared to possibly hit his upper glacis. Missed the T-57 heavy. Not particularly well aimed shot. So we've done some damage, we've nailed the T-54. Okay, back up to normal speed. Now I've got 2 shots left. This T-32 driver, well, it's difficult to be too critical because he's a T-32 in a very, very tier 10 game. Now I've got 2 shots left here and I want to use them. But I've been spotted. And remember what happens to Waffentragers that get spotted. I'm not trying to block this guy here, so, you know, sorry about that. But I'm trying to get myself in an angle where I can get this gun around the corner and start putting effective fire into this massive enemy tanks. But the T-32, he ain't making it easy. Now, I'm not saying he's getting in the way on purpose, and I'm certainly not trying to block him on purpose, but it's getting really frustrating on that corner. And this is why I'm backing off and going for a reload, because I know artillery is going to be very interested in what's happening on that corner. So, judging by the size of the hole, that looked like a very, very near miss from the T-92. Going for the reload, changing position. Still got plenty of tanks in front of me, spotting targets for me. There's no reason to take any risks. We've got 1 kill, but didn't do a lot of damage with it. 6 shots fired, only 2 of actually which did any damage, and one of those was just a very, very low health T-54 that we put the second shot into to finish him off, but he needed to die. So we killed him. Almost reloaded. Now I think I'm going around this corner against that Waffentrager, and then suddenly a wild E-100 appears. I'm going to slow things down here to half speed. This is why people drive the Waffentrager. Now the E-100 driver fires and should know better than to fire. I have the same chassis as an E-100. He fired and hit my upper glacis. It's the one place on an E-100 you never shoot. He should have known better, but it's going to cost him. And that is why people drive, or are going to want to drive this machine, because it can do stuff like that. And this is an absolute rout. There wasn't much opportunity for me to do much damage at all in that game. I got 2 reloads and that was it. And suddenly there's only 3 of them left. But it's nice to be on the opposite team for a change. Because it hasn't happened very often in the test server the last couple of days. I'm going to keep my eye on this T-32, by the way, and you'll see why. You see our 215B183 over there right in front of me? 271 health. It's just a mad scramble to beat. And you know, when you see where the enemy E-100 is, yeah, should be no surprise as to why the enemy team lost. There we go, T-32 just executed our own 215B, and I at least got some damage off against the surviving 2 enemy vehicles. E-100's still up, but what was an E-100 doing down there? There he is. Oh, side of the turret, yes please. I'll have some of that. A little bit of extra damage just to round the game off. It's probably fairly safe to say that I had a very frustrating time driving this tank. Most of the other vehicles in the new German tank destroyer line that I have previewed here on the test server, I was able to get a pretty good handle on them in the first couple of games that I played. And I never really had to spend more than a day driving them to get enough good footage to actually, be able to show you what I hoped was a balanced preview. Not so with the Waffentrager. And I don't know if that's just because I'm just not good at tier 10 machines. There isn't a single tier 10 machine in the game that I own that I'm actually any good at driving. My level of competence in World of Tanks seems to be tier 9. Go beyond that and I just suck. And that certainly might be a case. But I have had awful, awful games driving this tank. It's taken me 4 days of stuff like that. This gun with .29 accuracy on the 128mm, just missing over and over and over again, or hitting and failing to penetrate with its 276mm of penetration. It's entirely possible I've just had an unlucky streak. It does happen, and it's unfortunate that if that's the case, that it's happened when I'm driving this thing, the pinnacle of the new German tank destroyer line. But no matter how bad a streak of RNG you're having, eventually, even by accident, something has to go right. This was one of those games. Now, Airfield's a good map for this machine. With that 420-meter view range, especially with binocular telescope and the camo net, despite the size of this thing, even if you can't really keep the thing hidden, and you can keep the thing hidden, as you'll see in a moment, you can beat the enemy vehicle's view range if you get yourself into a position like this, and you've got a blocking force in front of you, like that mouse, to keep the enemy at arm's length. But that gun. 1.5 second aiming time, a shot every 2 seconds, 0.29 accuracy, and sometimes it's as if it just couldn't hit the side of a barn from the inside. And it happens too often. And of course, once you've shot your bolt, you're sitting there for a minute with targets driving in front of you, and you can't do a thing about it. That, however, is the nature of driving an autoloader tank. You can't have everything. Now I'm getting frustrated again at this point, so I drive out of cover. My binoculars pop back up, and there's this E50M that, luckily, the mouse blows his tracks off. And I managed to reload and get at least one shot into him. Badly aimed shot at that Waffentrager. Finally, a kill. Now I've been detected. Knowing how vulnerable this thing is to return fire, I'm going to pull back now. I still have 2 shots. And as with all autoloaders, it's reload management is an important skill. Now, I'm spotted again because I'm not actually in cover behind this bush. I could have taken a shot at the side of that E50M, but at that kind of angle, it would probably just bounce and frustrate me even further. So now I have to decide. Even with 2 shots up, it's still going to take me 60 seconds to fully reload this thing. And what I want to happen here is for our mouse to fall back and coax these guys into coming out. Now, I am in solid concealment here, because I can't see through this bush. That means that they will not see me if I open fire. But I move forward anyway, because I need to know what our mouse is doing. And now suddenly it becomes apparent that that mouse there, he can't move any further back and sucker these guys into coming out, because there's nowhere for him to go without exposing his flank as he tries to pull back around that ridge. So now I understand why he's doing what he's doing. Now with 2 shots left, it's decision time. So I go for a reload. Somebody's got shots on that 215B over there. And then our artillery starts calling for help and dies. And that's when we spot an enemy T-110E3 in our base. And we're being capped. Our object 263... Well, I can't let him go up there alone. Well, I could let him go up there alone, but it's just as well I don't, because that T-110E3 is not the only thing that's capping us. I'm reloading anyway. By the time I get there... and I've been spotted. Hopefully by the time I get there, I will be loaded. But knowing how vulnerable this thing is, and the lousy gun depression, at the last moment I decide, screw this, because the first thing they're going to see when I come up over that rise, before I can even point the gun at them, is this huge vulnerable turret. So while the concentration's on the Object 263, and I'm loaded, I'm going to come around behind them. And it's just as well I did, because not only is there an IS-4 and a T-110E3, oh, here comes a Death Star. Gun, don't fail me now. He used a fire extinguisher, so a second shot finished him off. T-110E3 used a repair kit on his tracks, didn't do him any good, killed him anyway. 1 shot left, I donk it in the back of this IS-4. Now, Object 263, come and rescue me. And that's what you can do in this machine. 3 kills in seconds. And I may be taking 60 seconds to reload this gun here, but I'm not going to go down without a fight. The 263's closing in. The IS-4 has realised that I'm reloading. He needs to kill the 263, so I back around him so he can't get away, and the 263 comes in. Come on, and finishes the job. And suddenly, all they have left is their artillery. So that was pretty good. And that, right there, is the most fun I have ever had driving this machine. I've been playing this thing for 4 days now. And that's why you keep playing. That's why people keep playing World of Tanks. Our 215B183 has just managed to kill himself. Just as, you know, just as we're about to win, you can always rely on your teammates to attempt to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory by doing something stupid and getting themselves killed. So now it's just ourselves and the T-92. The T-92 is entirely capable of one-shot killing both of us. The Object 263 is only on a couple of hundred health. I still have 1,300 hit points left. I basically had to use the tank's hit points as a damage sponge on that IS-4. I was out of ammo. I couldn't shoot him. I had to literally just try to dodge as many shots as I could and take the beating, keep him interested and distracted to allow the Object 263 to get up there and save me, because I couldn't kill the guy myself. Now, where's that T-92? Now, there's no communication going on here. The 263 driver is Russian. Or he plays on the Russian server. And obviously I don't speak any Russian or Belarusian or whatever. So we're just watching where each other are going on the map. He's on low health, so he's going to go and hide in the cap circle amongst that mess of buildings, taking cover in there from artillery fire and forcing the T-92 to make a decision. Hide or come and reset the cap. If you hide, you're going to lose. If you come to reset the cap, you might die. If you hide, I might find you and you might die anyway. But either way, you're going to lose unless you come out to reset that cap. And I've got a pretty good idea where he's likely to be hiding. Yep. Shouldn't have taken 2 shots, not with 560 average damage, but he's dead. And we're not. So, 4 kills, and the best game I ever played in the Waffentrager E-100. Not the most damage I've ever done in the Waffentrager E-100. Well, we'll see when you look at the post-battle results screen, but that was definitely the best game I've ever played. So, that was my first class mastery badge, 1600 XP undoubled. Didn't actually do that much damage in that game. That was only 4,000 damage. And I've had games where I've done 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 damage in this machine, but lost every single one of them. And I think it's quite telling that in those games, it was where I was sitting at the back and doing, the tank destroyer thing, playing this thing the way it really needs to be played. And yet the most fun I ever had driving this machine was when I just disregarded how this thing should be played and got stuck in, as you just saw me do there on airfield. And I think that's probably half the problem that I have with the Waffentrager E100, and that it has to be played in a way that I really don't like playing. I'm a medium tank driver at heart. I like getting stuck into the action. And you shouldn't really be doing that with this machine because it's so incredibly easy to kill. But it really is fun when you do it. Summary time. First of all, I need to say, just so you completely understand where I'm coming from, I do not actually like this machine. I didn't like it nearly as much as I liked the new German Tier 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. I thought they were all fantastic machines. Well, they are all fantastic machines, and I enjoyed driving them. This is also a fantastic machine, but I really didn't enjoy driving it. Now, what I'm absolutely definitely not saying is Jingles has said this thing is crap, therefore you shouldn't buy it. Not at all. This is not crap. I just didn't get along with playing it. And I didn't get along with playing it because it really does lack flexibility. It's very much a one-trick pony. When this thing has fired its magazine, it is 100% useless and almost completely vulnerable while it is reloading. Machines like the AMX-50 Foch 155 or the 215B183 tank destroyer also suffer, obviously, because they have long reloads when they've fired their magazine or their single shot. But they're not as vulnerable as this thing is because they at least have armour. 254mm of turret armour, for example, on the 215B183, 180mm of sloped frontal armour. And it's a very small, low-profile target as well on the AMX-50 Foch 155. This thing is absolutely huge. It has a massive weak spot on the top. If you can keep this thing hidden, which is going to be a challenge because of the size of the thing, then yeah, you're going to do very, very well while you're reloading and waiting for the next victim to pop up. But not every map in the game supports the kind of playstyle that this thing needs to be effective. You're never going to be able to use this thing as an assault gun in the same way you can a Ferdinand or a Foch 155 because those have armour. This thing is very, very vulnerable, and it should be because it's got the most powerful tank destroyer gun in the game. So I don't have a problem with that. I think it's balanced because of that, but I just don't like that massive lack of flexibility that this thing has, and that's probably why I prefer driving medium tanks over any other class of vehicle in the game, because you just have options and flexibility with medium tanks that you don't have with one-trick ponies like the Waffentrager E100. So while I didn't really like this machine anywhere near as much as I liked the new Tier 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, I cannot deny that this is a very, very good machine in the right hands. It's just that my hands aren't the right ones. I didn't really get along with this tank. However, hopefully I've shown you enough of what this thing can and can't do for you to be able to form your own opinion and decide for yourself whether or not you think you're going to have fun with this tank. And you are going to have fun with this tank. You're going to get this thing on certain maps in certain situations, and you're absolutely just going to own every tank in the game with it. It's the most powerful tank destroyer in the game. Of course you are. But you're going to find it frustrating as well when you get... Well, I wouldn't like to play this thing on Himmelsdorf. Let me just say that. I think it's going to perform well, even on a map like Himmelsdorf, as long as your team aren't dying like lemmings around you. because this is a machine that very, very, very definitely, probably more than any other type of vehicle in the game other than artillery, needs its team to stay alive around it, to take the hits, to spot the targets, so that this thing can go to work and do what it does, which is just to bring devastating amounts of very, very precise firepower to bear in a very, very short space of time. If you like the sound of that, you're going to love the Waffentrager E-100, because it does it better than any other machine in the game. So there you go, folks, the Waffentrager E-100. Not really my cup of tea, but there are going to be plenty of you out there who absolutely adore this thing. Hope you enjoyed the review. Patch 8.9 is, as of today, I'm actually recording this the morning that patch 8.9 goes live on the EU server. The North American servers will have it tomorrow. There it is. It's in the game now. The most dangerous tank destroyer in World of Tanks. As always, folks, take care on that battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.